Hello and welcome to this free video workshop where I will demonstrate to you how you can make this lovely car with your circular knitting machine with 22 needles. This project is part of a series of vehicles. In the description of this video you will find a link to all different vehicle videos I made. Please tell me in the comments where you are from and how you like this workshop. For this video workshop we need a few things. Of course, our circular knitting machine with 22 needles. It can be every machine. Colors yarn. And then you need a lot of stuffing. Your yarn needle that came with your machine, one or more. I'm using a crochet hook that's 5.5 millimeter. Use Google to find the size in your country. Of course, a pair of scissors. Stuffing. Optional, a rattle. And a pair of cartoon eyes or eyes that you like. You can also sew on buttons for the headlights and the brake lights. But I don't do that. I keep it simple, but you can put anything on them that you like. The pattern for this project contains two different types of tubes. Tubes knitted with the use of scrap yarn. And we have to knit regular tubes where you cast on with your working yarn, knit, and cast off with your working yarn for the wheels. You have to knit 4 wheels and you start knitting 6 rows with the color of your tire. And then you change color, for example to the color of your car, for the car hub. And you knit 2 rows and then you cast off. Knit 4. In one of the next chapters I will show you how to prepare them for assembling. And then we have to knit 7 tubes with the use of scrap yarn. I like to knit small projects with scrap yarn in series. Check the playlist in the description of this video for how to do that. But we have to knit tubes with the use of scrap yarn. And then we have to close them. Let's check the pattern. You cast the first tube on with scrap yarn. Then you knit for the bottom 25 rows, 27 rows in the color of your car, 8 rows in the color of your window, 17 rows in the color of your car, 8 rows in the color of your window, 27 rows in the color of your car, and 25 rows in the color of the bottom of your car. And they will be joined later in the process. Then we have to knit a whole bunch of small tubes with the use of scrap yarn. I like to knit them in series, then you knit just one tube. And now I have to separate them. In my humble opinion, it goes a lot quicker when you knit in series all those small tubes. So, I'm splitting them now, separating them. I have to knit 4 tubes with 10 rows and scrap yarn cast on and cast off. So, 1, 2, number 3, and number 4. And I have 2 tubes with 10 rows in the color of my car and 8 rows in the color of my window. So, the last separation. And there they are. So, let's check. I've knitted 1 long tube. And 2 tubes for the side windows, for the side doors. 4 tubes in the color of my car. and the 4 wheels. I'm going to close them. If you want to know how to do that, check one of the next chapters. Close them all, but leave the tails on. That's very important because we need the tails for assembling the car. Leave the tails on the wheels and on all the tubes or panels. You end up with 4 small tubes with 10 rows in the color of your car, 2 tubes with 10 rows and 8 rows, and the long tubes with all those rows. Everything is closed. You leave the tails on and the wheels are also finished. Then you're ready for assembling. It goes quick and it's fun, and before you know it, your car is finished. You have to knit these tubes with the use of scrap yarn. I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can add the scrap yarn and how you can remove it very quick. First, I'm going to start to knit with my scrap yarn a couple of rows. And then I'm going to change to another color of scrap yarn. I'm just cutting my yarn, putting it to the inside between the last and the first needle. And then I take another piece of scrap yarn and put it into my feeder, also between the last and the first needle. Make sure that the tails are long enough to reach the table. And knit 1 round, so every single needle has to pick the color once. I'm cutting my yarn and putting my tail between the last and the first needle, as every tail I have used. And then I'm taking my working yarn. I'm hanging a long piece of thread inside my machine because I'm going to use it to pick up my stitches and do whatever I want to do with them. I'm going to demonstrate to you how I like to close my tube. But first, you have to put your yarn between the last and the first needle. And then you are going to knit. So what have we done? We have started with scrap yarn, changed to another color and knit 1 round with scrap yarn. And now I'm just knitting my desired pattern. That's not interesting because that's for a special project. And now I'm finished. I'm cutting my yarn a long piece because I want to use it to close my tube. I'm taking it out of the feeder between the last and the first needle again. And then I'm going to put my scrap yarn into my feeder between the last and the first needle. And I'm going to knit 1 round. See, just the same place all the time between the last and the first needle. 1 round, so every needle just picks the yellow color in this case 1 time. I'm taking it out of the feeder and I'm taking another piece of scrap yarn. And I'm going to knit a couple of rounds with the scrap yarn. And after knitting a couple of rounds, there are no rules. I'm just cutting my yarn and knitting until my work drops from the machine. So I'm continue cranking when my yarn runs out until my project comes loose. Now I'm going to demonstrate how I'm going to close the tube. I'm going to close the tubes with the use of my 5.5 millimeter crochet hook. It's 5.5 millimeter. You can search for your size in your country. Tubes have two ends, the casting on and the casting off end, and we are going to start with the casting off end. I'm turning the inside to the outside, and I'm going to show you the last knitted stitches with my working yarn that are captured between the scrap yarn. And when you put all those ends to the right, you will find your working yarn, and you will find those two yarn tails of that single strand row. So those three ends we need. You see that the working yarn is in the middle, and the yarn end closest to you goes into the first stitch we need to close the first pair. So I stick my needle through that last stitch and to the first stitch. Look, the working yarn is in the middle, and those two yarn tails are coming out of those two stitches. And when you look at the rest of the stitches, you will see that you can line them up easily into pairs. I'm putting my needles into all the pairs so you can see how it looks like. And this way you can see if you're doing it correct, because a tube with 22 stitches has 11 pair stitches. So I have to check if I have 11 pair. If not, I made a mistake with picking up those first pair, those first two stitches. Now I'm putting my needle into my last pair. Those are next to each other, but also in front of each other. And now I have 11 pairs. And I'm ready to close the pairs. So I'm sticking my crochet hook into that first two loops, and I'm taking my working yarn, and with the hook I'm going to pull the yarn through the two loops. And now I've started closing my tube. I'm going to pick up the next pair, pulling the yarn through all three loops on my hook. From now on, I have three loops on my hook every time I'm going to close a pair. And I'm going to close all 11 pairs. And my last stitch, you always end with a pair. And then I'm pulling my yarn another time through that single loop, and the tube is closed. You have the scrap yarn tails on the right. I'm turning so that my working yarn is on the right, and now I'm going to pull out that single row with scrap yarn. That easy, and you can lift off the rest, and now this side of your tube, the end is closed. And now we have to close the beginning of the tube, and that first stitch is a little bit more difficult to find. The hidden stitch is easy to find, but most people make the mistake by not searching for it, so they look at the loops and they think that this stitch is the first stitch and this is the opposite stitch, but it's not. You have to look at where your scrap yarn goes through. Find the first two loops where the yarn ends of the scrap yarn go through. And then you will find that the piece closest to you that stitch is a little bit hidden. This is the first stitch and the opposite stitch, and the working yarn is in between. And when you're not sure, you are going to count your 11 pairs again. Line them up. And my last pair, you always end with a pair. And then you continue closing as we did at the end of the tube, exactly the same way. When you are getting used to this, you don't need all those needles anymore. They are just for learning purpose. And sometimes I make also a mistake and I don't end up with a pair. And when I don't end up with a pair, I made a mistake. So I have to undo the closing by just pulling out those stitches and start over again with finding the real first pair. And then you close it the same way. In this step, I'm going to demonstrate to you how you can make wheels from your knitted tubes. It's very simple. You start with your casting off tail and you are going to pull it so that there will be a hole. Then you stick your needle to the inside and pull at the tail until the hole is completely closed, and then leave it hang. Then you are going to search for your pair of tails where the color changes. So don't use the tail you just pulled, but make sure you grab the pair and not those tails together. Then you are going to find your casting on tail, your start tail, and pull that slowly so that your tube will close, but make sure that you roll the ribs and those tails from the color change to the inside. Leave the casting off tail to the outside. Roll all the ribs to the inside and pull it tight. And then you pull at the tail of the casting off, and you have a small flat circle, and you can just knot the two tails together, and your wheel is ready for assembling. Don't cut the yarn tails because we need them for assembling. Form your wheel and it's finished. When you have a big wheel, it works exactly the same. Pull at the yarn tail that you use to cast off, stick it to the inside and pull the hole close. Then you are going to find the pair of the color change and you knot them together. I'm folding them around my finger because then I can put them to the inside automatically, and I'm going to pull at my casting on tail, making sure that all the ribs are rolling to the inside, leaving the cast off tail to the outside, roll all the ribs to the inside, and when they are closed you just pull those two tails tight and your wheel will form. And knot the ends together when the flat circle is finished. And then you are ready for the next step, assembling the wheels to your vehicle. So this is how you make the wheels, and you're ready for the next step. Hello and welcome to this quick explanation how to join tubes knitted with your circular knitting machine to each other in all possible ways. You can join side to side. You can join end to end. You do that when you want to make a infinity tube, for example. And the last possibility is end to side. So I'm going to show you all three ways to join them. The first variation is end to end. I will demonstrate it to you and explain it with a little drawing. I take two ends of my tubes and I lay them in position. We are going to use V-stitches to join the tubes to each other. When you look at your work, you will find just under the edge V-stitches. They are all in one line and just next to each other. So you have to find your V-stitches one by one. They are all in line, so it's easy to find the top one. On the other end, you are going to find also the V-stitches from the right to the left. They are also in line, so it is easy to find them. We are going to join them one by one, so make sure that you understand how to find them, and then we are going to join them to each other like this. We are going to join one V-stitch to one V-stitch, and we repeat that to the end. I'm using a contrasting color so you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to find myself the V-stitches. I'm starting with the one that's just at the edge or the corner, and I'm picking it up and I'm pulling my yarn through. Then I'm going to the other end and I find my first V-stitch, this one, and I'm going to pull my yarn through also, but not all the way. Make sure you keep a space between the two pieces, and then I'm going to pick up the next V-stitch at the first end. I'm pulling my yarn through, but not all the way. And then the second V-stitch on the other end. And this is basically what we keep repeating, picking up V-stitches on one side and on the other side. Make sure you don't pull your yarn tight and you are creating something like bars between the two pieces with your working yarn, and that's okay. Continue picking up those stitches one by one. And when you're finished or your yarn is a little bit short, you just have to pull at your yarn. And then I have to continue the last few V-stitches. And the ends are joined. And now I'm going to pull at my yarn. And you will see that the ends will be joined very nice. You can pull through your yarn all the way. I'm pulling it a little bit back because I don't need that much of yarn. Make sure the tension is right. And this is how you join the ends to each other. On the inside you have a nice ridge, and on the outside it looks as if it is knitted to each other. So when joining ends, just join the V-stitches one by one. The next joining is the joining side to side. We are going to join the sides of our tubes to each other. So I'm picking up my tubes, for example, like this. So we are going to join them in the length. I'm turning my example so it's more clear to see what I'm going to do. We are going to join the sides of our tubes. And that's very simple. I'm taking my contrasting yarn. We're going to join them like this. So when you put them like this, you will see lines with V-stitches along the edge. Again, those V-stitches. And when you line them up pretty, it looks like they're just knitted in one line. You see those V-stitches, they're just one row. See it as a rail track. And you are going to follow that track. When you stick your needle in the V-stitches, you will find those vertical bars, just like in a train track. And we are going to use those bars. We start joining with picking up one bar and joining it with a bar on the other side, and then we pick up pairs. We are going to pick up 2 bars at a time, just like the V-stitches, but this looks a little bit different, and you end sometimes with 1 pair, but I will demonstrate. I'm going to stick my needle in the first V, and I'm going to find the bar. That's basically the back of the V-stitch. It's just one, little piece of yarn. Then I'm going to stick my needle in the first V-stitch on the other tube. And now I keep space in between, just as with the ends. And I'm going to stick my needle in where it came out. Those are big holes. And I'm going to pick up 2 bars at a time. Go in where you came out. Pick up the next 2 bars. Make sure you get the vertical bars, the right ones, not the V-stitches. Go in where you came out, pick up the next pair and pair them up. Don't pull at your yarn that it goes tight, because then you cannot see clear what you are doing. Continue picking up 2 bars at a time. Don't skip bars. Don't go under twice. Just continue following the rail track, picking up the next pair of bars. Do that as far as possible, as long as your tubes are. This might look a little bit messy, but when you pull at your yarn, your tubes will be joined seamless. Your work will look like as if it is knitted in one piece on both sides. So when you join tubes side to side, it's usable on 2 sides. It's very simple. Just pair up the vertical bars under the V-stitches. So this is the second option, joining sides to sides. Then we have the last option, and that's joining the end to the side. I'm going to cut my yarn. I'm going to join the end to the side. Using also the contrasting color. We want to make it look like this. So for that I make a little drawing and explanation, and then I will show you how you have to join the end to the side of a tube. That is also very simple. You already know how to find V-stitches and how to find those bars, and we are going to combine them. So we are going to use the bars at the side, and we are going to use the V-stitches at the end. We are picking up 1 V-stitch at a time, and we are going one by one all the way. On the side we are going to pick up bars. First V-stitch 1 bar, second V-stitch 2 bars, first V-stitch 1 bar, second V-stitch 2 bars. So we are going to alternate the bars. I'm going to demonstrate picking up the first V-stitch, and I'm going to pick up 1 bar, because with every first stitch I pick up 1 bar. Keep space between the tubes. I'm picking up V-stitch number 2, and when I'm picking up V-stitch number 2, I'm picking up 2 bars. We are working in a series of 2 V-stitches, so I'm starting over. The third one is named number 1, picking up 1 bar. And the next one is number 2, and at V-stitch number 2 I have to pick up 2 bars. 1 V-stitch, 1 bar, second V-stitch, 2 bars. And continue all the way. You pick up 1 V-stitch a time and you alternate 1 bar and 2 bars. This V-stitch number 2, I have to pick up 2 bars, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, and go as far as possible. And then you just simple pull at your yarn. You can pull at whatever yarn tail you like, and your work will close nice, without wrinkles, as if it's knitted together. A little rich on the inside and on the outside, complete seamless. And this is how you join tubes with the end to the side. You join V-stitches 2 bars, alternating 1 and 2. We also know how to join the ends of the tubes to each other with the V-stitches. And now we know how to join the sides to each other by joining pairs of vertical bars, which gives a very nice seamless texture. I start my assembling by joining 5 parts into 1 panel. I'm using a lot of yarn needles, but with only 1 you will also get it. I'm using these 5 parts, and for now I'm putting the wheels aside, and I'm going to explain how to join these to each other. Put your panels like this. Take your yarn needle and start joining these to each other using this technique, the vertical bars by pairs to each other. So, if you don't know how to do that, check the chapter how to do this. I'm using the tail on the corner. That's why we leave the tails. And I'm going to join them by pairs. I keep on joining the whole color of the car, and then I just pull at my yarn tail and the panels will be closed seamless to each other. I leave the tail on And I continue doing exactly the same thing with the second one. And that part is also joined very quick. And now we are going to the next step. Keep the yarn tails a bit untangled, but leave them on. It's time to join the wheels. I'm going to put my yarn tails of my wheels all in yarn needles, but you only can use one also, and then you have to do them one by one. That's not really different. So we are going to attach our wheels, but we want to have all 4 wheels in the same spot. So I'm going to attach my first wheel where I want to attach it. I keep away from the edge because I need the edge for assembling. And I'm poking through a place where I roughly want my wheel to be centered. Put the second needle a stitch further and stick it through also. Repeat the same procedure for the next wheel. So put it on the same height. And put the next one 1 or 2 stitches aside. Leave always a little space between. And then you are going to pull and your wheel will be joined to the panel. Pull through the yarn tails and your wheel is joined roughly, and we start to connect it further. Keep all yarn tails untangled. They are important for the assembling. They will disappear later. With the yarn tails of the wheel, you just simply make a knot to secure them, so the wheel won't leave the panel anymore. Now they're roughly joined. And then you take the yarn tail in the color of your tire and you are going to stitch it to the panel, but you leave space between the edge and where you start joining, because the edge needs to be free for the assembling of the car. And you simply stitch halfway around through the color of your yarn a little half circle. So is how you secure your wheel. And when you're done, you just simply make a knot in the same pair of yarn tails, secure them, and that's how you finish it off. And then you are going to do the same to the second wheel. And of course to the second panel. They have to be identical. You can cut the tails of the pairs of the wheels so you know they are finished off. You don't have to pay attention to them anymore. They disappear to the inside later. Do that with all the wheels and leave all the other tails. Untangle them if needed. And when they are finished, you put them aside and we are ready for the next step. We are going to work on our long tube. We are going to join our tube into an infinity tube by joining the ends with the V-stitches to each other. Let's pair up those V-stitches and make an infinity tube. Go all the way to the end. If the edges are uneven, don't care, don't mind that. That's not a problem. That will disappear on the inside later. And now we are going to make the model of our car. And we are ready to start joining one panel to the tube. Arrange the tube around the panel so that the colors are matching and untangle all the tails. I'm making sure that the track on the edge of the tube is actually on the edge of the tube. And then I'm going to start joining from the corner at the bottom with the yarn tail that's corresponding with the corner of my panel. We are going to join from the bottom up and all the way around, and when needed we can change yarn to longer tails when we come along them on our way. So we are going to join it complete in just one continuous row and leave all the tails on. Untangle them, but leave them on. We will cut, secure or knot them later when needed. So I have my right yarn tail and now I'm going to start at the bottom in the color of my car at this position. And we are going to join the panel to the tube using the joining vertical bars in pairs method. Go as far as the panel allows to the corner, pull at your yarn and join the panels to each other, or the panel to the tube. And now you are going to fold over your tube like this, and you are going to join the rest of the color of the car to the panel. And you are going to join V-stitches to bars. You can just use the tail you are using. You can also change the tail to the other tail that's also there if it's longer. But it's not needed for this project, I think. So I'm going to join V-stitches to vertical bars. I go all the way until I come at the point where the color changes into the color of the windows. And then I pull at my yarn and I close until my yarn locks at the corner. And then I just simply continue folding the tube following the panel. And now I'm going to join the color of the window to each other. And for that I have to join pairs of vertical bars like this. So I'm going to join this little piece That was quick. Just pull at your yarn. There will be a little hole. We are going to finish that later in the process. Continue joining the tube to the panel by just folding the tube over. Stay on the same track. And start joining the V-stitches to the vertical bars like this. And when at the end, pull at your yarn and your window will be closed very nice to your roof and your car is forming. And then continue closing all the way down the same way. When the window is finished, pull at your yarn until your yarn locks at the corner. And then fold over your tube. Check what yarn tail is the longest. There are multiple yarn tails. And change over to the longest because we need to go all the way around. And then simply continue closing using the method needed for the parts at this moment. Pull at the yarn when you're at the end. Make sure the tension is correct. On the inside we will finish off later. Fold your tube around the corner and continue. Check, the car is really appearing now. Pair up the last vertical bars of the color of your car. Pull at your yarn. And now you only have to join the bottom to the panel. Untangle all the tails. Put the tails to the inside that are not needed. And continue joining. This is why you have to leave space between the wheel . Join the V-stitches to the vertical bars. And just continue. And when you come at the middle, where the ends of the tube are joined, I will show you how I do it there. And now I come at the part where the tubes are joined, and I'm just simply going through both ends as if it's two bars. And then I continue as if nothing happens. The last stitches, and then we're almost done. Go as far as possible You can smuggle if needed, nobody will know, and poke your needle to the inside. Check the tension, and then you can simply make a knot in this yarn tail to secure it. You can do it the way you like it. Check all other tails and secure them if needed. On this spot, I'm going to pull the 3 different sides to each other by just sticking through the layer on the inside, not on the outside, and pulling it together. Then you will not see a hole from the outside. And then I continue checking all the tails and do whatever is needed to make sure that our work won't fall apart. Closing the little hole, here I can just knot the tails together. And when everything is finished off, you're almost done. Look how cute your car is looking at this moment. I want to make them in all kinds of colors. In the next step, we are going to add the second panel. But not only the second panel, of course we need to add stuffing, optional a rattle, and you can even add eyes. So I'm going to join the panel exactly the same way, only I leave a spot open to add the stuffing. So join the panel to the tube all the way around, using the yarn tails of your panel. And you will be finished before you know it. I'm almost done. Now it's time to add the eyes. If you want to give your car a personality, you can add these comic eyes. These eyes are not safe, so don't do this for small children. And when you like those eyes, you just add the washes on the back. I'm not going to use the eyes for this car. Now I'm going to check on the inside if I can finish off some yarn ends. And now it's time to join the bottom to the panel, but not all the way because we need to add the stuffing. Join the bars to the V-stitches. I'm going to start stuffing. Make sure you stuff in the corners. Don't overstuff. Don't stretch your knitting. Just stuff enough to keep it in form. And don't forget, it's a soft softie. Also, don't forget to put in a raddle if you want one. Now, and when you have put in some stuffing, continue closing and stuffing and closing and stuffing until you're done. And the last stitches you are allowed to smuggle. Pull the yarn, check the tension everywhere. And when you're okay with it, just knot and stick the needle to the inside and to the outside and cut your yarn. And then your car is completely finished. Isn't she lovely? And this is the end of the workshop. If you like this workshop, please let me know by leaving a comment under the video and giving me a thumb up. Please keep on watching this video to the end, then you can see all kinds of different projects you can make with my free video workshops. In the description of this video you will find a lot of helpful links and also the links to my different types of social media. In the future there will be a second series and a third series with vehicles and also a roadmap blanket and a Christmas train. So stay tuned, join this channel. Stay safe, with love from Holland. Bye bye.